Malay in Malaysia is a very different ball game. You have the Malay archipelago, which includes southern Philippines, Indonesia, Brunei, Malaysia, and southern Thailand. So that's the Malay archipelago, and people look similar, speak similar languages, and so on, right? In these countries that I just mentioned. But you can't deny that they were under the kingdom of Hindu kingdoms of hundreds of years, right? Like Sri Vijaya is one of the kingdoms that you talk about. So
the original Lion King.
so so they
You know the reference, right?
the original Lion King, you say? Nancy Kanya.
Yeah,
So
yeah, because the guy all of a sudden went down to the border and sees a lion in the sky or something, and he's like, oh, yeah, this is gonna be Singapore. And it's like,
oh,
wait,
Singapore.
and it's like, wait a second, this guy actually saw Mufasa in the sky?
Remember. Yeah, so
The following is a long open conversation with Shamir Hameed, Assistant Vice President of Brand and Marketing Strategy at Astro Awani. We got a chance to sit and talk about many topics, like his unique journey from accounting to marketing, his ventures across the United States, England, and Australia, and how his working professional colleagues at his MBA allow him to become the 2023 Commencement Day speaker. This is On the Long with FVR podcast. If you like this thing, feel free to like and subscribe and to contribute to the channel on the description below. And now, your featured presentation. Can you imagine that tomorrow is another holiday?
yeah,
How many holidays Malaysia actually has?
quite a lot. I think, if I'm not mistaken, we're the second or third most a country with the third or second country with the most number of public holidays.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But you know what is believable? We have an episode today, so we have in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of On the Long with FVR. Today we have Shamir. Thanks for doing this, man.
Thank you, Fabian. Finally,
Oh yeah, finally.
after a year.
Oh yes. Imagine, we have right there with Imran back in Cambridge more than a year ago. And we can start first by saying a little more about your story. So can you tell us a little more about yourself?
Wow. Where do I start?
From the beginning.
From the beginning. Oh, okay, fine. I was born in the state of Penang, in Malaysia. It's the northern state in Penang. In Malaysia. So it's an island. So Penang Island. I think most of the people here would know where Penang is simply because of the food that comes from there, and so-called is the benchmark for the taste of food. I would say that. I might be biased just because I'm from there, but that's the truth. Truth be told, no, I'm kidding. Yep, born 1983, year of the boar, May 20th, Taurian, and about 4 months after I was born, my mom brought me to London to join my dad, who was doing his law degree in London. So I grew up in London for 4 years, but I barely remember anything because I was like 4 months old till I was 4 years old. And after that, I returned to Penang, and I went to school in Penang until I was in grade 9. And my parents and family suddenly decided that I was getting a bit too comfortable with life. So they decided to send me all the way to Adelaide to a school, a boarding school, and this was my year 10. So I went to Australia, Adelaide, for a year. I was supposed to sort of finish off my high school and my tertiary education. That was the plan. But some unpleasant things happened simply because I was the only Muslim in the entire school.
Okay.
So, and we were dealing with children, right? Like kids, school kids. So the mentality was very different. I had a tough time the first year. It took me about maybe 2 months or so to get used to the whole homesickness and all of that, but more of it, it was the dynamics of the culture, understanding the culture and religion and so on. So I had a tough time in terms of dealing with various characters there. So what happened was I told my parents that if you want me to stay on,
Mm-hmm.
I will, but I'm not sure what kind of person I will end up becoming, right? Because it was very challenging. A lot of mental abuse,
Okay.
and thankfully not physical. So I came back to Malaysia, and then I joined a local private secondary school. It's a boarding school, and that was like life changing for me, because for once I had a very different kind of. I had a boarding school environment, but it was a good setting, and I had my year 10 and 11 in that school. So I had to redo my year 10, by the way,
Oh,
because they
okay.
didn't accept the year 10 from Australia. It's a different syllabus. So then, upon finishing my what we call here as SPM, that's our O levels, I was back in my dilemma on what to do after that. So I I attempted computer science first. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. At that point in time, when I said marketing, it didn't seem like a strong
Mm-hmm.
sort of like a subject or a course to do, which will give you a good future. And so they always fell back to the whole doctor, accountant, and that drill, right? So but I also applied to go to a local university, um, simply because there was a lot of noise behind me going to Australia and coming back, and apparently a lot of money was wasted there and so on. So I wanted to do my best to save
Mm-hmm.
moving forward. So I got in to the local university. It's called UIA, International Islamic University of Malaysia. In fact, Prof. Hadija is from there as well. So I was there for 3 years, and then I decided that that's not working out,
Mm.
because it was an Islamic university and it's a beautiful university. I was doing economics, but then I had trouble with accounting.
Okay.
I couldn't grasp accounting, and they have this rule where if you flunk one subject 3 times in a row, you will be expelled no matter how well you do with the other subjects. So for me, it was quite alarming that I was not doing well in my first semester with the accounting. So I thought I had to change the whole thing. There were other factors involved that influenced my decision. And next thing you know, I just decided to drop out. So I dropped out, and then I worked for 1 year, just sort of like soul searching what I want to do in my life, right? Like what do I want to pursue in terms of my studies. And I fell back to what I always liked, which is advertising, communications, marketing, and so on. And to kickstart my studies again, I went to this institution called Lim Kok Wing.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people may know the name of that institution. And once I joined Lim Kok Wing, unfortunately, I felt it was the quality wasn't there. Another that's a big story, but long story short, I decided to transfer whatever credits that I had within those 2 semesters from Lim Kok Wing to Melbourne, and RMIT Melbourne. That's where I ended up, and I completed my degree there.
Mm.
Yeah, and then yeah, so Australia, especially going back to Australia after that first sort of experience, it was entirely different, because this time you are there as a tertiary student, right? And you are in a city where it's multicultural, and there's a lot of mix of nationalities and so on. So RMIT was an amazing place. The quality of education was so good. I still think about it, and I had the best 2 years of my life, because for some reason I was very active in Melbourne. Like we had a band, we performed. I was active in clubs and societies, and I loved what I was doing in terms of studies and so on. And yeah, when I came back, I joined a advertising agency. I wanted to be a copywriter.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I also sort of like minored in during my course in RMIT. But the industry was a bit, the wasn't really, how do you say, favorable, simply because every ad agency was saying you need at least a year experience in copywriting.
Ah, that's how to
So
say.
yeah, and I was like, if no one is going to give me that, where am I going to get that 1 year, right? So in the end, I accepted the offer to become an accounts executive, thinking that maybe I could sort of move once I'm in. So I was a year in advertising in the one of the huge agencies, which is McCann Erickson, and I got an offer from a creative agency to be the creative director. And so I jumped on the chance, and I had a fantastic 3 year journey there, doing multiple projects and campaigns. So I was a copywriter. I was also the guy who would do pitches. We brainstormed campaigns together. We did a major campaign for this jeweler in Malaysia. And we worked on a couple of motion graphic videos and so on. So that was really good. So 3 years there, and then I got married. And then after that, I took a plunge because I needed. So, for example, how do I say this? I needed to grow. So 3 years being in this place, I needed to grow in terms of income, in terms of designation, and so on. What I did was I did not secure another job yet, but I left, and then I was looking for jobs, and it was quite a tough season. This was 2014.
Okay.
It was quite tough to search for, to find a job, and somehow I landed, thanks to one of my good friends who recommended me to this sort of like an entrepreneur. And this company that this entrepreneur had predominantly did fashion retail. So if you've heard of the shoe brand called Florsheim,
Oh, yes.
yeah,
I know that
so,
one very
yeah,
well.
Yeah. So they were the distributors for Malaysia here.
Oh.
So I worked with him, and during my stint with him, he brought in these fantastic leather bags from Italy called Piquadro,
Okay.
and I fell in love with the bags the moment I saw it. It's such a good brand. The only setback was awareness wasn't there among Malaysians. Malaysia was already so used to TUMI, so for them, like, TUMI is the thing, right? But it was
It's
hard.
not even remover?
I think, like, when it comes to prestige, I'm sure there's a few, but based on what at that point in time, like 2014, 2015, actually, the market that Piquadro was at was the same market as TUMI.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay. I
yeah.
see it.
Because
I see it.
even the design of the bags and all that is somewhat around there, but I would say Piquadro bags. Check it out if you can. It's
Please check it out, brother.
Piquadro. No, I don't get anything out of it, but it's just the passion that these people who are making the bags have. So I had the chance to go to Milan with my boss. He went to do his buying, right? And I saw the passion that they had. It's so detailed, the way they even look into the how you sew it, and the type of materials that you use. And then that's the time I found out that. So I was saying that why can't you guys have the Italian football team wear it, right? And then I realized that the Italian football team is not really prestigious to them.
Ah.
So if you want to go for the high market, you go for skiing, the Italian skiing team. So I was like, oh, so that's when I kind of knew, like, we're talking about personas, right? So yeah, one of my lessons for personas was like, yeah, not everything that's popular is the market, right? It's really like mass market, and then you have your up market and so on. So anyway, a year and a half with him, and then I decided to move, and I landed an opportunity in Astro. But there was a vacuum between my time away out of that previous job till I got my offer from Astro. I was without a job for 8 months, and that 8 months will never be forgotten, simply because it was a very challenging period in my life. So 8 months without income, married. At that point in time, living with my in-laws, it was not the best of situations for me. You know, everyone around me were kind, were understanding, but you just sometimes feel that challenge, right? You're like, and you see like my wife was working at the time, and she was coming back late every day, and it seemed like she's the one, you know, she was the breadwinner of that time, right? And then like here I am just looking for jobs day after day for 8 months. So it was a very, very challenging period. I would say is one of the low periods that I've had. But thankfully, I landed a job in Astro in the news agency called Astro Awani, and I've been there since for the past 7 years.
Such an amazing journey.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
And that's why people wanted to know about this. And one of
Yeah,
the things that
yeah.
we can start dissecting was John Shamir back in Australia and thinking to return to Malaysia. Penang, you said it was a place, right? So, how John Shamir decided, okay, it's time? What was the little triggers, the little things that you began to ask yourself back then? Because I guess any young man will be like, I guess those are the things we need to take consideration.
You mean like why did I move from Penang?
From Adelaide to Penang.
Oh, back to Penang after that, right? So the thing is, once, so the decision was made by my parents
Okay.
to send me to Adelaide. I mean, of course, when they asked me like, would you like to go to Australia? I was like, of course, why not? You know, that's a good change. Because honestly, I didn't really have a good time in school in Penang. It was, and when I talked to my other schoolmates from Penang, they had a totally different experience than me. They had a better experience. I did not. And I will come to that much later because I've only sort of discovered that part of me during my MBA.
Oh.
Yeah. So there was in back in school. Actually, you'll be so surprised, and in fact, most of my friends will get surprised when I say that I was mostly alone. I wasn't socializing much in school, especially in Penang, because it was a very unique situation, or rather unfavorable situation, where there was a lot of underlying racism, and
Okay.
and me being me, there's always been an identity crisis because on paper I'm Malay, right? But ethnically I'm Indian. You know, I have Indian blood, but my great grandfather is the one. So I'm what, third, fourth generation in Malaysia, right? And he fully assimilated to the Malay culture in Penang. So if you go to Penang, you'll be quite confused to see that a lot of people who look something like this are Malay on paper. And likewise in other states as well. So it's more of cultural assimilation. So you do have people who are still not Malay on paper, and these people get triggered when they know that you are Malay on paper. So you have that thing where an Indian in Penang, like a Hindu Indian, would think I'm Malay, but the Malays, the Malays in Penang would think I'm Indian. So in the end, I just mixed a lot with the Chinese.
Yeah, that's a very
And you can see that
fascinating
even
point
in
of
my
view.
MBA. Yeah.
Yeah, because we can take as a reference Hadija from episode 30. She is like an ethnically, culturally Malay.
Yep.
And that
Yep.
can be a reference to say, okay, that's what a Malay looks and
Correct.
behaves
Correct.
around.
Yeah.
And then you are, well, let's say, Malay in paper, but
Yeah.
you look more like an Indian.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it's the Chinese Malaysians that are actually embracing you.
Yeah. So you have that thing, and also a lot of it are based on socio-economic standing as well.
Oh,
So if you look at it, I mean, just to give a bit of a, I mean, I'm sure Prof. Hadija gave an entire dissection of what is going on, right? But to simply put it, so Malay in Malaysia is a very different ball game. You have the Malay archipelago, which includes southern Philippines, Indonesia, Brunei, Malaysia, and southern Thailand. So that's the Malay archipelago, and people look similar, speak similar languages, and so on, right? In these countries that I just mentioned. But you can't deny that they were under the kingdom of Hindu kingdoms of hundreds of years, right? Like Sri Vijaya is one of the kingdoms that you talk about. So
The original Lion King.
so so they
You know the reference, right?
the original Lion King, is it? Nancy Kanya.
Yeah,
So
because the guy all of a sudden went down to the border and sees a lion in the sky or something, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, this is gonna be Singapore." And it's like,
oh,
wait,
Singapore.
and it's like, wait a second, this guy actually saw Mufasa in the sky?
Remember. Yeah, so
Oh yeah,
yeah. So, I get you. So that's, I mean, there's a lot of things that are unspoken, right? And even Malaya, when it was, it was under, the religion was Hinduism or animism, and all of that. Islam came in much later. So there's this thing also whereby it is believed, or it is probably a fact, which I need to verify, but it is just widespread. Everyone understands this, that Islam was brought to Malaya by Indian traders, Indian Muslim traders. So, as you know, the map from the Arabian Peninsula, the next is India. So where my ancestors come from is like at the coastal area of India. So most probably they became Muslims first, and then they started trading with Malaya, and then they brought Islam to Malaya. So that's how the flow was. So Islam, in a sense, came to this side of the world, and more recently, I would say in the 1900s, the race became more of a political race.
oh,
Yeah, simply because if you look at historically, if you look at all the again socio-economic standing, right? So traders. So you have Arabs who are in Malaysia, but they are Malays. What's the connection between a Malay and an Arab?
yeah, because one of the elements besides the practicing the faith and also the ethnicity is the assimilation in the culture.
Yeah, and in fact, the way people were on paper, way before independence, they actually put what bloodline you are. So it's in Malay, it's called darah keturunan. So your lineage, your blood lineage. So for Arabs, they would say darah keturunan Arab. So Arab lineage. And then for people from India, it's DKK, which is darah keturunan Keling. And Keling is actually a very derogatory word right now. It's like the N word.
Oh,
Yeah, but it was used at once upon a time against Indians from India.
wow.
But that was like more recently. But before, so that's okay. Let's just say,
In the ID, it was that.
it was just there. I mean, that time it was not derogatory, by the way, because if you go to Penang, there is a mosque, the Indian Muslim mosque. It is called Masjid Kapitan Keling.
Oh,
Kapitan, right? So this merchant, he was a well-to-do merchant from India, and I forgot what's his name, but when he arrived in Malaya, in Penang, I think he sort of like started the whole the stepping stone to build a mosque in Penang, right? So the mosque was named after him. So then, at that time, killing wasn't a bad word. So even me saying it, so even if a politician utters that word right now, it's a big hoo-ha. And especially like Hindu Indians will take offense
okay.
in today's day and age. So me saying it, I'm going to be controversial, but never mind.
Come on.
On the Lawn with Fabian is a
Yeah.
controversial program
Yeah.
after all.
Yeah.
Yeah, so why not, right? This is history. We have to talk about it.
Uh huh.
But yeah, so I mean, just to give you a bit of a glimpse of,
The context.
Yeah, the context, right? What's happening around Malaysia at the moment, and if you look at sort of, let's go to Najib Tun Razak, our previous prime minister who's in jail right now. His lineage, he has got Bugis lineage, which is from Indonesia. Yeah, and Bugis is you can say it's a tribe, right? There's so many tribes within this whole archipelago. You've got Java, you've got Minang, you've got Bugis, many. And oftentimes within the Malay community, people will sort of refer to each other with their lineage, like, hey, you Javanese, hey, you Minang, So that's an ongoing thing, So, whereas if you look at his cousin, who used to be our defense minister, his name is Hishamuddin. So they have Turkish blood, right? Mahathir, he has Indian blood. In fact, his dad is said to be from, or his granddad, I might be mistaken, but they are from this state called Kerala in
The
India.
south of India.
Yes, the South India, and they have their own language and all that. So they have got Malayalam, sorry, and so on. So there's so many mixes. I mean, it's just like United States, right? It's just a mix of mixes. Malaysia is very similar, but when it comes to race, for some reason, that's sort of, I guess it's covered in Hadijah's video. So I will not delve into
The
that.
Super
Yeah.
2 hour special.
Yeah. So that watch that, by the way.
Oh yeah.
If you want to know the whole story, like the backstory behind race and culture and so on in Malaysia, right?
Now, did you and Shamir decide to give a try in economics?
Yeah.
And then you realized that in order to cut clean, you moved into these other courses and everything. But then you did something that for some young people can be controversial, even today, which is to drop out and work
Yes. So there was so the other factor was that I had a major breakup
Oh.
within like the same campus. So there were many factors. The main factor was this route that I took doesn't seem to be working out, simply because I wasn't doing that well in especially accounting. And then there were the other factors that sort of made it sort of more solid for me to just drop out. It is controversial, definitely. Family, friends, my family would think of the society in Penang and so on, so community and blah blah blah. But in my case, I was actually, this is a good question. Perhaps I'm known as a rebel because I'm the guy who came back from Australia after all. I didn't just stay there and grit my teeth. I was like, no, this is not working out for me. I want to come back. So I guess, I've had that experience before, and calling another shot, which today, when I look at it retrospectively, was the right decision.
Okay.
I don't regret the decision at all. In fact, I wish that I had dropped out earlier or switched course earlier. Yeah, if at all I have a regret, it would be, why didn't I do it earlier?
Yeah, that's very insightful, especially
Yeah.
because a lot of people just let the time pass and then think that, time
Correct.
will help.
But nevertheless, I had a great time in UIA. That was the place that I joined drama,
Ah,
and I had my first play there, and it was a Shakespeare play. It was called A Midsummer Night's Dream, and I was casted. It was very funny because I was a very shy person once upon a time, and I challenged myself. I said, I want to perform. I want to do something. I need to get out of my comfort zone, right? So I was passing by this poster that said auditions, but me being me, I'll be like, I'll think about it. Days passed. As I was passing by the poster, I was like, and when it came to the final day of that audition, I just told myself, maybe it's just not meant to be this time. So I was just looking for excuses not to go for the audition. Maybe it's not time for me, so never mind. There will come another time, you know. So I went back to my room, and then I just couldn't get my head around it because I'm like, so you keep saying this to yourself. When are you actually going to do it? So the next day, the day after the audition was closed, I just texted the number in the poster to the person. The number was there. I just said, hey, I missed the auditions. I was just trying my luck, if at all it's still open. And then the person replied, it was the director of that supposed play, right? And then she said, yeah, we are still looking for our Oberon, which is one of the characters in the play. Then I was like, holy shit, what did I get myself into? And then I was panicking and I was like, shit, oh man, did I do the right thing and all that? So anyway, I went for the audition, I read the script, and then they just liked me instantly and they said, you're Oberon. So that was my first play. We even went into the state level of competition. And it was the first English play in that sort of like among the universities in Malaysia, because most of it are in Bahasa Malaysia. So they had to create a category to give us an award to say that most promising team won. The other one was best English performance or something like that.
Okay.
So yeah, that was a fantastic and fantastic experience. And from then on, I've been very interested in plays, in theatre, and I love it. I really miss it. So I've been in about 4 productions.
Now,
Yeah.
not many people remember this, but we already released the full clips about the memories of MIT New York. Piano,
Oh,
playing
piano, yeah.
and singing.
Okay.
So when was that?
Ooh. I play by ear. I did go for a couple of classes of this thing called Electune. You know, it has like keys on the top, keys at the bottom. It's something that you start learning how to play keyboards and piano and so on. So I did have some basics. But after that, in school, for one of the music classes, it was, I mean, everyone in Malaysia goes through this. We have to play the recorder. So that's like music lesson, recorder. It's like have you seen a recorder? Yeah, it's like a flute, clarinet, but it's like the most basic instrument, right? So what I used to do is, instead of following what was like, this is do, re, mi, and all of that, I used to just play Jurassic Park, the theme, and cartoon themes on my own. And then the class would just go around me and like, can you play this? Can you play that? And I'll be trying, I'll just playing, I'll just figure it out, right? So that's when I kind of felt that, hey, this thing, I mean, it's like a passion. Music, I would say it's from my dad.
Okay.
He is a music enthusiast, and he sings. So growing up, I've always seen him sing. He's a lawyer, by the way, by profession, but his hobby is singing. He loves singing. So I've always watched him sing, and he is the one who introduced me to many genres.
Okay.
It's so wide. It's like, you're talking about the pop songs of when we were living in England, for example. In the 80s, it was all about Freddie Mercury, George Michael. You have what do you call those teams? Tears for Fears, right? And all these different bands, right to Indian classical music. Indian Muslim music, which is Pakistani, like Qawwali, if you've heard of Qawwali, and Ghazal. He introduced me to all of these things, and that's how I had a lot of interest building up towards music. And in my time, we didn't really have much access to, because my family was more inclined towards like a different genre of music. My influence came when I was in boarding school. Then I was introduced to many other genres, like when I was in Australia for that 1 year when I was in year 10. Despite going through all kinds of shit there, it was eye-opening to be introduced to heavy metal, death metal, and so I got to know bands like Korn, like Deftones, and all of these bands, right? So anyway, what I'm trying to say is that I am universal when it comes to appreciating music. I love people like what do you call him, Pavarotti,
Placido Domingo,
all
the tenors.
this, yeah, the tenors, right? You got Frank Sinatra on the other hand, on a totally different genre. You've got Nat King Cole, so that is one, and then you've got the whole rock scene with Led Zeppelin,
The ACDCs
the
of the
ACDCs
world.
of the world, and all of that, and then you've got the whole pop, Michael Jackson. Before pop, you have Motown. I like funk. I love that kind of music as well, and then right till different languages. Like I like Arab music, like classical Arab music, um, Indian music, of course, because I grew up, in a household which listened to a lot of Indian music, like Indian film music, whether it is Hindi or Tamil, both we have been listening to that all my life. And yeah, I mean, it's just universal, everything. I even listen to African music.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because, I love the rhythm in the African music. Who doesn't, right?
Maybe right now I'm gonna be a little controversial, but have you tried kizomba?
Sorry?
Have you tried kizomba?
Kizomba!
Uh-huh.
I would like to.
Yeah, I mean not the dancing, but also the music. The music
Yeah,
is
oh yeah, yeah.
kind of Afrobeat, but it's like
yes. Afrobeats are
and
fantastic.
you began to hear, okay, this is like a Portuguese.
Yeah.
Most of the songs are in Portuguese for the kizomba,
Okay.
and instead of doing the typical 4 step for bachata or salsa, it's on 3.
Three. Yeah.
So it can be a little quicker, but also you need to do it slower.
Right.
So it's a whole different system of not only the dance itself, but also when you're interacting with the partner and hearing the music. So yes, I can relate to how you can actually expand your comfort zone by always seeking those new things and incorporating your own style. Talking about the styles,
And I love Spanish music.
thank you. Now, talking about what was the good years and also the bad years, you mentioned that there were moments around 2015 or 2014 that there were gaps.
Yeah.
And a lot of young professionals usually have that question when you have a gap on your resume. How can you face it? So, my question for you is, when you were in those interviews, how was the angle to answer those gaps?
Oh, you mean like when I was looking for jobs? And
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, your esteem is like rock bottom, right? It's low. So you just sort of need to muster the courage, whatever you have left. And it's like a compounding thing. You get rejected and then you feel low about yourself. And only like recently when I met one of our friends, one of our from our cohort, who said that, I've been rejected many times and it's just feeling so low. So one thing that struck my head was to tell that person, when you are going for your next interview, don't bring that baggage along, because they have no idea that you've been rejected before. Only you know that. So go there, force yourself to be like this is your first interview after you've graduated or after you have moved from the other job, right? So that's what I used to do. I will try my best to say, hey, I know I'm going to this interview with a fresh mind. You just have to pretend that nothing happened before that. And perhaps maybe you can sort of muster that confidence and that self-esteem, which was not easy. Definitely was not easy. So the other thing that I realized at that point in time is that don't bother with JobStreet, don't bother with LinkedIn, Easy Apply. You just got to know someone. It's all about network. If you know, I got my job by knowing someone. And it's not about knowing someone like inside to sort of like make sure you're hired. No, you just need to know someone to sort of put the first word. Then it makes a difference, instead of you just sending in a resume to a portal and then they will just vet through it and then you have no idea whether they are vetting through or they're just taking the first 5. You don't know, right? So it is different when someone who you know, who will say, okay, I will let my boss know about this. It's different. It's a different ball game. So that's my learnings from there.
Mm-hmm. That's very insightful and also very powerful in this day and age. Talking about days and ages
Yep.
that were from the early 2010s and now the early 2020s, you discussed something that was a serendipity during your latest journey. When did you discover during your MBA?
Oh, what did I discover?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so this is very interesting because when I started my MBA, which was 2021, August, both of us, and here we are, 4 or 5 days shy from graduating. So
No, it's commencement.
Commencement.
It's commencement. That's what
Commencement.
Dr. Rigobon says. It's no graduation, it's commencement.
Oh, commencement. Okay, it shall commence. Is that okay?
We miss you, Roberto. We miss you.
Yes, we do. You know, your cap especially. But yeah, that was a fantastic last lecture.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that was nice.
All of a sudden, we felt like Michael Jordan. Instead of a last class, a last dance is a last class.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And then, I mean, I couldn't have asked for more, right? It was Roberto Rigobon. Nice one. So, where were we? We were talking about
Your self-discovery.
the discovery, right? So when I started my MBA, again, see, we are different in terms of he's full-time and I'm working professional, which means I'm working and studying at the same time. So it feels like you're split into three because you've got your work, studies, and family. And they're going at the same time. It's like that movie Michelle Yeoh won her Oscars in, right? Everything, everywhere, all at once. That's what it's a roller coaster ride, and you're bringing everyone with you in, up, down, and everything. So during the first few months of my MBA, or probably the first year, I would say, it was a struggle, a big struggle. Scheduling, managing your time. And I started to realize certain parts of me which was very reminiscent of my school days, my undergrad days. And this time, as an adult, well, when you look back, perhaps you are more sharp in sort of identifying that actually why am I doing this? Like, for example, why do I procrastinate so much? Why am I unable to sort of manage my time properly? You know, I'm already in here. I'm like I started working in 2011, so I'm like 12 years, you know, in a career and all of that. So, and then you have certain sort of feelings that you start to ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling that way? So it was really the coping part was really, really tough. And what I did was I saw someone and I spoke to the person, and the person asked me, have you ever been assessed for ADHD? And I was like, I knew what ADHD is. In fact, it's a running joke in the family, whereby, you know, my uncles and aunties will joke about it. It's like, hey, you know, we have ADHD. We just can't sit still. We keep shaking our legs, and then we cannot have a conversation that will last in one topic. It just goes everywhere, right? So that was a running joke in the family, but I never looked at it as a serious thing to be assessed. And I told her, no, I know about ADHD. I know what it is. Maybe not enough, but I've never thought of me going to get assessed about on it, right? Of assessed, you know, at all. And she said, perhaps you should. And then she did there's this assessment which is very, very like top line, you know, assessment, and based on the score you can see how severe it is. I scored like nearly 100%, but she did say you should not take this as a conclusion. You should really go and seek for professional advice on this, which I did, because I know that ADHD is a very trendy subject as well. If you are procrastinating, if you are late for, I mean, you are not punctual, people will already think they have ADHD, but it's a lot more than that.
Okay.
It's a lot more than that. It's, what I did was sometimes when you face a professional like a psychologist or a psychiatrist, words are not easily smooth. I mean, it's not smooth. You tend to maybe miss out some points and so on. So what I did was, over the course of 2 weeks, whatever that comes to my head, I write it down.
Okay.
When there's something that I feel that this is one symptom that I need to ask about, I'll write it down. So I collected about 20 points, wrote it down, printed the paper. When I went to see the psychiatrist, I said, "Hi, I'm so and so, blah blah blah. These are the symptoms that I would like to check with you on. It's better printed. Let me know or ask me what you need to ask me." And then the first person looked at it, asked me a couple of questions like, when you were in school, did you do the lot? All these small questions. I said, yeah, I used to, blah blah blah. For all these questions, I was saying yes. He said, you have it. You actually have it. And it was like, wow, what a reveal. But I didn't stop there, because it's a trendy thing. I went for second opinion within the next few days, because to me it's like, yep, okay, that's one person, fine, validated. I need another person to validate. So I went to a totally different place, but also a psychiatrist. Okay, I got it validated. It was verified, yes. They said that you can do an official assessment which will cost some money, but you don't need it at this point in time, because that's more for school students. And
Oh, okay.
so that's when, so what they were saying is, don't waste your money on the assessment, because obviously we know that you have it. So now it's about how do you manage it, right? I said, yeah, so what do I do? So anyway, the big takeaway, I would say, in my MBA was this reveal. And it answered all my questions since I was a kid. And that has really put a lot of things in perspective, including relationships with family members, relationship with friends, social part of things, and also my mind, right? Because I think you would know that, or you have probably seen how I'm able to connect something out of nothing and make jokes out of it, right? So, and everyone will always ask me the question, how do you connect this and that? So I was like, I don't know how I do it, but I just can't stop doing it. So that's the reveal. So that's the reveal, yeah.
Well, that's good that you got the bravery not only to see in the eyes or the big canyon, but also to understand what the canyon was about to tell you, and
Yeah.
then go bravery into the
Yeah, go face
night.
it. Go head on, right?
Exactly.
You have to, you have to take the bull by its horns, and I have always believed in that. That's one thing that perhaps I could say that is a trait, where if there is a issue, I will just go head on, and then see what happens. But this thing has really revealed a lot of things that are very necessary for me to be aware of. And I'm still learning, actually, how to sort of mitigate or how to manage this thing.
Yeah.
It's a learning process, it's an ongoing learning process, because on one way you need some kind of structure, on another way there's even talk about medicines and all of that, right? And all of a sudden, this is another surprising thing. Within our cohort, I started talking to people who also have ADHD,
Ah,
and some of them have been taking their meds since they were 6 years old. That was eye-opening for me, because I would have never imagined
oh, really?
such an early intervention for a child, right? So I guess they come from like first world countries where the awareness is really high, and they must have had an intervention very early on in their lives.
That has to be consented by their parents.
Definitely, I think it's the parents who brought them to the doctors, right?
Yeah, because this is such a huge topic when the parents have to actually step in for a treatment.
Yeah.
Nowadays, right now, on the time of the recording, there was a huge movie that was first censored by Twitter, but then it was a sponsorship of Elon Musk himself. A documentary by Mike Taibbi about how parents are literally getting pushed to treat their kids for something, and it's like if they don't yield, they will lose the custody of their kids, especially rather in Canada, it's like a huge thing going on.
Yep.
And I'm surprised to also learn about this
Yep.
from these other members of the cohort.
And more mental health is the thing to sort of focus on in today's day and age, right? I mean, I think the awareness, especially in Malaysia, I would say that in this past 5 to 6 years, there's a lot of awareness on mental health, and more people are getting more sort of, how do you say, aware about it. I think that's a good thing.
Of course, it is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because the only way you can go full clip is because you have the brakes to stop.
Yeah.
That's how when you drive quick,
Yeah.
you can push and
Yep.
say, okay,
Yep.
you have that confidence.
Yeah.
And now we discuss all of these from the young moments to coming to age, and the responsibilities of a father and husband that has also something to provide, especially in the bad times.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, it's very brave to actually, under the standards of masculinity, I need help. Not many do.
Oh yeah.
Not many
Yeah,
do.
that's true. Yeah.
At the beginning of the episode, we discussed that, hey, look at that, after 1 year, finally we got the episode going and rolling. And you have been in Cambridge now in 2023. You were in 2022.
Yeah.
So my question for you is, what are you seeing different among these two times?
Oh, okay. Okay, first of all, not many of our cohort was there, so it was very different. It was not as exciting as the previous year. I would have to say that. I missed all of you. All of the cohort, the rest, I mean, only half of the WPs were there. The other half was still, they've completed it last year. So what was different is basically the familiarity. So you're more familiar, and perhaps you're more, you're more aware of where things are, where you want to go and eat. So you have the routine. To get into the routine, it wasn't hard at all. Like the first time was more on trial error, getting it, getting
I
it.
remember that one of the first things you did last year was to take a picture with the cows of chicken fillet.
Yeah, I mean, the first place we went to was Chipotle. It's like, I was with Desmond, and Desmond and I, we went to Chipotle, and we were like, wait, bro, this is the time. We first went to this place called Chipotle, and then I was like, okay, do I order the tacos
Or the bowl.
or the bowl or what? So it's like, it was nice. I mean, I will never forget the first experience. So second time around, what was different is that, of course, the subjects were totally different. We did before entrepreneurship, we did
Pricing?
no pricing. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it because it was the week before that. Negotiations, Jared Kiran, fantastic, amazing. And then entrepreneurship, and then in between we had Professor Vivek, who did digital product management. It's a new thing that they introduced. Yeah, so these three subjects plus Michael Kusumano's strategy thing. So what was different? I think being with the 24s was very different. They're quite a bunch, quite an exciting bunch. Plus, we had 18 golden ticket holders.
18.
18. Imagine an entire cohort of 21s. Yes. So that just, the dynamism was really, really rich. Because you've got the 21s who have actually done this via Zoom before. Because they were the ones who were affected by COVID the most. They were going through lockdowns and everything, right? So the entire MBA was on Zoom. That is why they have gotten the golden ticket to at least experience it in Boston, in Cambridge. So they were there, fantastic vibe, it was just nice to see three different groups. 21s, and 21s were mixed with WPs and FTs. And you've got the 24s, the entire bunch, and then you've got the 23s. So yeah, if there was something different, I forgot the weather was different. It was much warmer than the first time. But on a deeper sense, what I wanted to do this time, like consciously, I told myself, the next year, like I told myself last year, the next year that I come back to this place, I want to get inspired. I want to search for inspiration. So as I walk through MIT, I'm reading whatever that I could read. I'm walking through the dome. I'm looking at the walls. I took as many pictures as I can because what I wanted to do is contain that feeling of being in MIT. Because once I'm back here, you can't deny that it's back to sort of status quo, right? In terms of how you feel, in terms of you're back and then suddenly you're looking at work emails and you've got your routine to do, you're back with family, so you tend to forget that particular position that you were in, which you're out of the entire sort of equation for a while. You open up your learning mode, you open up your your mode to receive inspiration, and I wanted that to stick. And I had an additional assignment to start on the speech. so so I was telling myself, okay, I have to start the speech somewhere because I've got assignments to submit and I've got work deadlines. When am I going to find the time to start on the speech?
Oh yeah, not many people know, but by the time of the recording, this speech was still not finished. Right, because this is gonna air like one day after the commencement.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so yeah, so I am still on it. I had to submit something a couple of days ago because there was a deadline. So it was actually like an assignment, right? So I submitted a draft, but I'm still working on it because it has to come from the heart.
So, quick question: Is this the first time you're doing this?
A speech? Of course it is. Of course, in an academic perspective, yes. But only last year I gave a speech during my sister's wedding.
Okay.
Yeah, and that one I wrote it the night before. And my parents were very happy with the speech.
Okay.
So until today, my dad is very proud of it.
So
Yeah.
we have right now somebody who already got experience doing this.
No, I mean I wouldn't say experience. I have emceed before. In fact, because this year we have a royalty coming, right? So I think like Jules was telling me like, oh, we have a lot of protocols. It's going to be very different this time around. The MBA office is like paying attention to what needs to be done in terms of the protocols and what to say. So then I told Jules, I said, don't worry, I have emceed events with the sultans around. In fact, the Sultan Nazrin, who's coming, I've emceed an event with when his dad was around, and his dad was the Sultan of Perak, which is the state where they reign, right? So just let me know whether he's coming as the Sultan of Perak or he's coming as the Deputy Agong.
And what is an agong?
Okay, interesting. Did Harida she didn't touch on this, right?
She
Okay,
didn't touch
cool.
on that.
So, just to give you a bit of a context,
Uh-huh.
Malaysia has this system called constitutional monarchy.
Okay.
Okay, and so Malaysia has kings. So it's very similar to the British system, whereby you have you have the king or queen of the time, but they do not have executive powers. Right, that is vested in the prime minister. But it is just ceremonial where once the votes are, once you know which party won, and then the party will nominate who's the prime minister, they take it to the king or queen. In Malaysia is the king. We have not had a queen, so king, and then the king will consent, and then the king will sort of
Approve?
will approve, and he will give his blessings, and that's it. We have the prime minister. So a constitutional monarchy in Malaysia is different from the British in a sense. We have got, okay, I might be wrong here. We have got several kings. We have got about 14 states, right? And there are a number of states which has its own sultan. So Perak has a sultan, Kedah, Perlis, Terengganu, Kelantan, 5, Pahang, we have Johor, so 7, right? And then we have Negeri Sembilan. I think that's about it. Am I missing something? Yeah, so we have 8 sultans, right? So they take turns to become the supreme king of Malaysia. The supreme king is called Agong. So every 5 years, it rotates between these sultans.
And how do you know who is next?
So they have already established, because this is, now we are running on the second round of the whole sequence, right? So at present, the supreme king is the Sultan of Pahang, right? And by far, he's been kind of the coolest Agong, because he's very sort of in touch with the people and all of that, a lot more than the previous kings, right? But I would say that the Sultan that's coming to our graduation, Sultan Nazrin, his family has a fantastic reputation of always playing a part in the society. And by this I mean, Sultan Nazrin himself is a very much, he's an Oxford graduate, he's also a Harvard graduate, and he is a very intellectual person. He always talks about the quality of education, he talks about corruption, anti-corruption, he talks about anti-extremism, right? And his late father, who was the previous Sultan of Perak, was Lord Judge. He was the Chief Judge of Malaysia. And he was very active in hockey. So during his time, Malaysia had one of the best hockey teams. And we were giving a good competition to India and Pakistan and all of that. So that was one time. Anyway, back to the constitutional monarchy. It's a very unique system. I think it's the only system in the whole world where you have a rotation system for a king.
And then you have the deputy king.
Yes, you also have a deputy king, which is Sultan Nazrin, is the deputy Agong.
And how do you? It's also determined, right? That once
Yes.
you have that, the king, you also have the deputy king.
Correct.
By the sign.
Correct.
That's already
Yes.
okay.
So there's a council of kings that meet every now and then. So I think that council of king, so is these states with the kings, they call them Raja-Raja Melayu, the Malay kings. They have their own council and they discuss things together. So they will decide who's going to be the deputy king. I mean, in terms of who is the king as well, these days they also discuss. But there is already an established sequence
So
for
the,
that.
the king is already established, but the deputy, every
Yeah.
time that the new one is
Yes.
on charge, they
Yes.
need to say, okay, who's going to be the deputy?
Yes. They decide.
So it's democracy among the kings.
Yes. So it's a very unique thing because we saw a lot of this involvement, especially in this past few years in Malaysia, because of the hung parliament last year, for example, right? And even before that, during COVID, we had 3 prime ministers, right? We had, so Mahathir, and then Mahathir left, and then we had Muhyiddin Yassin, and then we had Ismail Sabri, and now we have Anwar Ibrahim. Actually, we have 4. So during this time, the king, the present king, he took a different kind of stand where he's like, guys, I'm going to discuss with the Council of Kings, and we are going to come up with our sort of suggested approach to this. So they have been very involved, a lot more than whatever people imagined before. Because before this, it was just more of a ceremonial thing. You have a king and all of that. But this time, they were involved in the democracy. So that was a pretty interesting thing. So yeah, that's a bit of a background of that, of the kings of Malaysia. So you will be wondering, what are the other states governed by, right? I mean, who are they? We have got governors. So this is borrowed from the British times. So the state of Malacca, the state of Penang, the states of Sabah and Sarawak, they have governors, and these are elected by the federal, if I'm not mistaken, is the from the federal side.
There is also the federal territories, right?
Yes, so federal territories,
Like Kuala Lumpur.
yes, so they have ministers.
Ah,
Yeah. So they do not have a governor. They have the Minister of Federal Territory. Yeah, because There is two.
Yeah, there are two.
Yeah, Putrajaya and Labuan. Yeah.
Interesting to see that all of a sudden the past Shamir has to meet the present Shamir to give a speech, right?
Oh yeah, okay.
Because it was the late father that saw you doing the MC, and it's gonna be right now the son
Oh yeah,
to
yeah, yeah. You're
see
right. Yeah.
you like, okay, you're doing a speech.
Correct, correct. Yeah. How old was I when I emceed that function? It was probably 2006.
Wow.
Yeah, 2006, 2007, around there.
You know that this is the year 2023, right?
Yes.
So no, you know that we are equidistant to the same distance to 2006 to 2050.
Holy. Oh my God. No, I didn't see it that way at all. Thanks for putting that into perspective.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, framing, as Jerry Curran would say.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it will be interesting. Yeah, I look forward to this. But more importantly, it's the content of what's to be said, which I'm really,
It's still
really.
cooking, right?
It's cooking. It's cooking. And
I remember a quote by Dwayne Johnson. Do you smell what a rock is cooking? So can we
grew
smell?
up,
Can we smell what Shamir is cooking?
Indeed, indeed, you will be sort of you will be served. Let's just say that.
And that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it will be a very nice moment to remember as well. We are also looking for the episode with Tarman. We are gonna be doing a stand of invitation, like what we did with Leticia a year ago. But you know, first things first, we wanted to discuss with you as well about things that were from your personal and professional life. We have been discussing from the time in Australia, the time in Massachusetts, the time here in Malaysia, and your younger times in the United Kingdom. The question right now is, which was the biggest compromise you did, and why it was that challenging?
The biggest compromise. That's quite a heavy question. In a sense where I've never really thought of it deeply. I just felt that my education journey was very long, and hence I lost a couple of years. I could have started my career earlier, you know. Like for example, if I was in that institution, the International Islamic University, if I continued and I finished, I would have started work right after that. But no, I stopped. I worked for a year and all of that. So biggest compromise would be when I think making that decision to come back from Adelaide despite the resistance of family. Yeah, that was the biggest challenge, I would say. And what did I compromise? I compromised. So, for example, I was blamed. I was blamed for many things. Like, apparently, I wasted a lot of money that they invested when I was in Australia. But the thing is, it was their decision. You know, it's not like I asked and they invested and then I came back. No, I was asked to go. So, I had a very, very dark bunch of years from the time I came back from Adelaide. And when I joined that private school here in Malaysia, I actually joined year 11 first because I did my year 10 in Australia. And I was going through the classes for 3 months until they decided to send me back to year 10. So another downfall, I would say. So if you know you have your, like what Michelle Sagan would say, what's your life chart, right?
So,
Mine was like you know the heartbeat. It was like that for a couple of years. Yeah. But I guess compromise. I can't seem to get one significant thing, but compromise. Well, I was tested. Oh, my family was tested a couple of years ago. But I wouldn't call that compromise because let me just put context to this, yeah. So, long story short, I was applying for the Chevening scholarship. If you've heard of the
Of
Chevening
course, I
scholarship,
am familiar with that. It's
okay,
like an analogy of the Fulbright, but with a different.
but British
Uh-huh.
instead of American, is British. And I tried it for 3 years. I didn't get it, but the year I got it was the year my son was going through a medical condition that required, that didn't allow me to go anywhere. Yeah, and it was so surreal when I received the news that I have gotten the scholarship. I was in the hospital looking at my son. He was only 18 months old, but it was post surgery. And I looked at it, and it was that moment I looked at it and I was like, wow, like really. Yeah, here this is like 3 years in the making. And then, so it it brought me closer to, in terms of the higher power, in terms of spirituality. So, and then of course it was a no-brainer to say no. I have to. So I tried to defer. They said you can defer. The only reason they can accept is pregnant. And I said, I can't get pregnant. I literally told them, look, I can't. It's a joke. So but I did tell them that. I said, how do you expect me to get pregnant, right? So so I withdrew. When I withdrew, I asked them, will I be in contention the following year? They said, no, you have to reapply. You have to go through the entire process again, which requires you to write multiple essays, interviews like twice or thrice, and then you are waiting for a few months until they decide and all that. So, you know what? I did apply the following year, and I was put under waiting list, but I didn't get it. Then 2 years later, this opportunity came, ASB. Yeah, so it's amazing. When this opportunity came, I felt like it was a second chance.
And I have to say that in my book, you're achieving a scholar, man.
Thank you so much, Fabian. Yeah. So in terms of that compromise, I would say that there are many compromises that are made on a daily basis. I can't seem to find one that is like significantly up there, because there's so many heavy ones that is being made throughout, right? Yeah.
It's also insightful to learn from the guests that when they reflect and they understand there were compromises. That means you lived.
Oh yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes. It's a daily thing. Yeah.
Or at least you're open to say, okay, I'm willing to say that yes, something happened, and I learned from that.
Yep.
Given that you have been in many places, I would like to discuss which has been the little differences that you have seen across the regions.
The little differences.
Yeah, the little differences.
So I love to see cultures and languages. I always get so, I get fascinated by languages. I love it. Like when we were in Boston, for example, the accent. You've got,
Oh yeah, typical Boston accent.
yeah, Boston.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, right. And then you've got Bill's class. He's got the New York accent, right?
Uh-huh.
And
The
he's
typical
like,
Long Island New York
yeah,
accent.
hey, how you doing? So you have all these different nuances. I love that. And the thing about me, I speak to people according to their accent. Somehow, like naturally, I don't plan it. It becomes like that. Like with you, is now we're having a neutral one, right? But even before I came here, I was like trying to memorize. I was like, I forgot to say it actually. I was going to say that, ¿cómo estás?
De todo muy bien.
Yeah, there you go. Do I have to reply that? No, the other one that I was trying to say was, what was I going to say? Muchas gracias
De nada.
por tenerme.
Por tenerme en el lugar.
Ah, yes.
Muchas gracias por tenerme en el episodio.
Tu programa, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So,
Which is Spanish for thank you very much for having me in the episode.
yes. Yeah. So this is my hermano. So I love languages, and I think that's one thing that stands out when I go to different countries. And then I look at the culture in terms of how they approach things. Like the biggest thing that I saw in say when our like experience in Cambridge, right? There doesn't seem to be any hesitance or resistance to do anything that you want to do. You're free to do what you want. And funding is not an issue. People pour hundreds of millions into these institutions. And I start to wonder, wow, look at that mentality. And you can see very clearly it's for the advancement of the human, whatever, like agriculture, technology, blah, 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 under the dome, right? And it's like they really live that. They really live it. And I can only wish it's the same here. And then I also look at culture in the form of values. Like for example, so I grew up in a conservative Islamic household, but at the same time, I had aunts and uncles who studied in the US, and they came back with those, experiences and exposure, and it kind of became a bit more sort of open-minded in that sense, right? And then you can see how people react to it, how they accept it or do not accept it, and so on. But I am very thankful to have come from that kind of concept. I mean, that kind of sort of exposure where I've got uncles and aunts who have sort of guided me over the years to be open-minded, and that makes the difference. Like I will look at all the conservatives and I'll tell myself, I wish these people traveled. Because in fact, even in the religion itself, like for example, Islam itself, the Prophet has always encouraged traveling. Traveling to study is a form of jihad. Yes. And I know that word is very controversial, right? Because it's always used in a negative connotation, jihad, right? Jihad basically means sacrifice. That's it. So the emphasis, so for example, it has been so emphasized, so much so that it is also said that if a person who is en route overseas to study somehow dies in the process, they are promised heaven. So that's the emphasis part, right? So anyway, the importance of traveling. Like your question is so relevant to that because only through traveling you open up your eyes, your mind, your heart, everything, right? And what I see is how people live. Like when we, Cambridge, for example, how people live. In Australia, how people live. People are generally very happy, but you also have the unhappy parts. But then how they deal with it makes the difference, right? Yeah. How they deal. What is their perception or what is their paradigm? And in the US, it seems like there's a solution for everything. And here, it's entirely different. There's too much politics. There's too much, man. It's just. I even look at the way businesses are run. When you go to like places like, are we okay for time?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You go for places, like I go to Australia, right? I see how they do their branding. The name, like okay, the milk brand Pura. Have you seen Pura? And it is just the way they pronounce Pura. So Pura, this is Pura, and that in itself is a beautiful name for a brand because you are selling milk, and you are trying to say this is the Pura milk, right? And it does taste amazing. I miss the Pura milk. Right? It's so nice. I look at how they advertise. So me being a person from advertising, right? That's another thing that I notice. Advertisements, commercials in all these countries because it talks to me. It talks to me about them. So when I was in the US, you know what I did? I actually switched on the TV and I was just waiting for the commercials. Because every commercial was so unique. There was no commercial copying another commercial, and each had its hook, each had its fantastic sort of characteristics to it. I enjoyed it. In fact, you know what I was doing? I was looking for that ad on YouTube. I got the link and I put my link in the notes because then I can come back and relook at it and perhaps. So what I do in my work is I produce ads. I produce promos for my news programs.
And I'm happy that you saw that in the year 2022 when the diversification became to be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
I remember in 2021 and 2020, everything was sponsored
Yeah.
by Pfizer or sponsored by Moderna. And
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah, yeah.
stop,
Yeah.
where is my stuff? And it's like
Exactly.
now in
Yeah.
2022, it was okay. Now we see these commercials totally diverse. It's
Yeah.
so beautiful. It's so
Yeah.
beautiful because then all of a sudden it's like you are back in time, like waiting for that commercial.
Correct.
With the benefit that now we can watch it again.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
And it's so powerful because it also captures what are the values of the society.
Yes. And then you see other things like how people eat, right? And that speaks a lot about culture. You see the type of food the places have. That speaks a lot about culture. When I went to UK, so I went in 2017, just with my wife, and that was the only time I went since I was a kid. So after I was 4 years old, I've never been back to UK until I was 30, 33. So yeah, there was like a 30 years later, I went back to UK and I actually went to the same place I took a picture as a kid and redid it and put it side by side. So anyway, going to UK, I mean UK is just so mixed in terms of the people, and you can see how, again, I don't know, some people call it first world mentality, some people may say it's just a different mindset, but how even like the transport system, you see that they put their people first. That's amazing because I yearn for that here. So what you don't have here, you tend to look at it in a magnified lens when you go outside. Like in the US, how they actually talk to you if there is a breakdown of the train. They actually let you know, okay, this is what you can do and all that. I'm not saying it's not here, but it's not enough. But I think more recently because Malaysia has a very high percentage of connectivity, right? I think it's about, if I'm not mistaken, 90% or 88% of Malaysians are connected. So there's a lot of these updates on social media. But still, even if you go and see how stalls are being operated and all that, there's a lot of improvements that can be done. If I may give an example, Bangkok. So we went for our practicum to Bangkok, right? And in Bangkok, the best way to describe Bangkok was I was looking for a good term and then he just hit it. Imran said it's organized chaos. Why? Because you can see there's wires going everywhere and everything, but it still looks neat. And it still is clean. The toilets in Bangkok are super clean, well maintained. So the hawkers by the road, it looks like, the color is dim, I mean it's dull and everything, but when they are cooking, you don't see it as it being unhygienic for some reason. Because I don't know what it is. There's some order there. There's some form of order going on whereby the person, I think it all comes to the intention, right? They are doing it because they want to serve good food, not because of money. And I see, unfortunately, in Malaysia right now, no need to go that far, go to the Ramadan bazaars. You can already see that people are just doing things for money. They're not doing things to cook a beautiful meal or a good tasting kueh, cakes, whatever it is. You always buy and then you regret it because it just doesn't taste like how it's supposed to taste. And God knows how they're cutting costs and what they're doing and all that. Again, it's like a chain reaction, right? Because prices are up because of some other reason, and then it just ripples. It's a ripple effect. It just sort of like cascades down to the end product, which is like, damn, why am I paying so much for this? But in other countries, I don't see that. I don't see that in the US. In the US, for $15, wow, if you convert, yes, it's a bomb. But for $15, if you're earning there, $15, you get a huge portion. That speaks a lot about.
Yeah, $15 is minimum wage per hour in some states. But yes,
yeah,
we need to bring the context.
Yes, and it's pretty good. I mean, for me, looking at all of that, it speaks a lot about intentions. It speaks a lot about priorities. That's what it is. You know, priorities like the educational institutions in these places. So much emphasis on education itself, quality of education. It's not just getting a degree and looking for a job. It's about internalizing that knowledge and then seeing how you can sort of expand on it. I mean, MIT, God knows what else is happening. I mean, you've got genealogy, biotech, which is genealogy, of course, and then just going to the MIT museum itself was just eye-opening to see what kind of stuff, space, cosmic, plasma studies and all these things, right? And then we have the other bunch that's bickering about, hey, you should pray this way, you should pray that way. You know what I mean? Like the difference of spectrum. So that's how I look at it.
It's quite eye-opener.
Yeah.
Now, I would like to ask the following question because there are going to be some young Shamirs watching this.
Okay.
I need to ask you, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
Ooh. You had to ask me that.
Everybody knows that.
I would tell myself, I would tell myself to trust myself more and just go for it. Don't care about what other people think. When you make a decision, trust your instincts because you do know things. It's your subconscious that's making the decisions, right? But the moment you live for others, that's when you lose it. Don't live for others. So, if I'm allowed to swear, I'm like, don't give a fuck. Just move. Don't be chained by the opinions of others. So if you have that intuition, go for it. What's the worst that can happen? So that's what I would tell myself because I wish this was told to me at a very young age. So I came from a family background where it was not really a pleasant one because I was often labeled, which I kind of know now why, right? I mean, and it's always wrongly labeled as you are so and so and you are not in the right track and oh man, I can go on with this but I don't want to bore you. All I'm saying is I wish someone said, fuck it, do what you want to do. Yeah, so that's what I'll tell myself.
I cannot find a better way to end this episode. This is such a powerful message, man.
Thank you.
This is such a high note.
Yeah.
And how can people find you?
I don't know, man.
You have
tell
an
me.
Instagram, you have a LinkedIn, you have...
Oh, yeah. You can go to LinkedIn. I'm Shamir Hameed. Find me on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for the opportunity, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
It's been long in the making. And I told myself, in fact, because this, I just came back after 3 weeks, right? So there's a lot of commitments at home. But I told my wife, I said, no, I've promised Fabian. And I have to get hold of Fabian before he leaves because the next time he's coming back is for graduation and then he leaves again, right? So, yeah, we made it.
That's true. Thank you, man, for doing this.
Pleasure.
So, for people out there, please stay safe and see you when I see you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's it.
All right. I hope that was okay.
1 hour and 27 minutes.